Hello and welcome everybody to another podcast. Tonight it's not myself to my own. I'm with McMessy tonight, so it's us two who'll guide you through the action of the US Grand Prix at Dakota in Austin, Texas, and our second race in the USA this season. After Las Vegas at round six, it was Dakota this time out before we head to Miami in a couple of weeks' time. Um, Austin, the first ever GRL race was held around here. It was included in any GRL season as well, except season 3.5, obviously. And lots to talk about after this weekend, after many things have changed. Lobbies have glitched out at times as well, which was very great for some of the tiers. But yeah, I think everything has been managed nicely. And before we talked about too much about the track, I think we're going to talk about the drivers and the results. Therefore, we just head over into Division 1. In Division 1, it was an Alpine 1-2 in the end, with Welsh Jack winning from pole position and Snipes coming second, so the championship lead extends his lead, but just by a bit as Beeford finishes P3 after starting P4. Then we've got SLR Jacob in P4, who has his best season result, with Blade in P5, Torpen in P6, Gibson in P7, Neil Clark in P8, FRD Dan in P9, and myself in P10. While a 5-second time penalty drops Sora from P2 down to P11. So loads of points lost for the Alfa Romeo driver this week here. In the driver standings, Snipes obviously remains at the top with 252 points, and Beeford is still in second on 235. And we've got Blade on 186, tied with Welsh Jack, also on 186. Hamden still in P5 on 164, which are the only 5 drivers above the 100 points mark. Then we've got Raiders in P6 on 97 points. Then Mark Susan Ghost on 84, myself on 72, Torpen on 69, with Gibson on 58 points in P11. So he's really trying to get into those top 10 positions. In the Constructors' Championship after this week, Alpine extended the lead obviously to 438 points, with Mercedes on 318, while McLaren sit on 258, Alfa Romeo on 245, Aston 203, Red Bull on 195, Ferrari on 174, Haas on 149, with Williams 1 point behind them, and AlphaTauri on 82 points. So they're also getting towards the 100 points mark, while actually there have been no position changes this week in the Division 1 Constructors. Looking at the results, obviously great for Alpine, but there would have been one of your drivers in between, and Sora would have finally again been a good result for him, which I think was heavily needed. But he drops from P2 to P11. That's quite harsh in the end for his confidence, probably towards the last 2 races, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not great for him. But he's beyond, the confidence extra it would have gained. It's still a good result that he would have been there on track. So it's better than not being anywhere near and then getting a 5-second on top of that, dropping you back to last. Get some points obviously with the different point system that we do. So that's not too bad. But it's not been his greatest season, has it? Anyway, so imagine he'll come back next season, a different driver, hopefully, and better for it.
Yeah, last game it also was the second season where Sora was really, really strong, and he's still showing glimpses of this, like great driving style he has, because he's still picked up a couple of podiums. I think he's within certainly the top 7 drivers when it comes to GRL podiums this season. You reckon it's slowly coming back to him again, even though it's probably a bit late for your sake in the championship?
Yeah, I
But
think he's slow. I think it is slowly coming back, like you say, and he also a bit like Bright in Div 7. He's a win it or podium or nothing.
yeah, yeah.
So that's his driving style. He's on the limit 24/7, and you win. You can either go bad from it or it just perfectly works out for you. And that's just how it is.
Yeah, I mean, what would you say? Because he's obviously right now in 12th in the championship. In theory, best of the rest is Radius, who is in P6, who is like almost double his points tally. You reckon with
Yeah,
6 rounds to go, that's still on? Because probably some people would say he's quicker than myself, Gibson, Torpen, and Ghosts.
yeah. Well, I'd say the minimum we'd expect from Sora is to at least double his points from here on out. I'm expecting to hit 100. So that would be the aim, rather than saying where he's going to finish position wise. I just want him to hit 100 points because I think he's well capable of doing such.
Yeah, I mean, apparently it's from Ukraine for a couple of months now. I mean, that's interesting for sure. But yeah, I think, as I said, we can all agree that Sora certainly can do better. But yeah, I think the start of the season wasn't ideal for his qualities.
No,
That's another thing. But yeah, I mean, Welsh Jack has now won again. The kind of tier 2 driver for Alpine, which isn't really a tier 2 driver looking at the standings. But yeah, him and Snipes are really battling hard during that Grand Prix. I assume you haven't obviously watched it, but um, it looks obviously to be the closest driver pairing. Well, even though they're almost 100 points in between the two Alpines, and Welsh Jack is still giving it full beans to yeah. Go for any possible overtakes on his teammate and close that gap down. Um,
yeah.
and Snipes also was upset with that, and yeah, Welchak obviously said like he's going for it. You reckon that can cause a bit of bad blood between them two? Because Snipes was
Well,
obviously thinking he's in the right, while Welchak is just trying to win any race from here on.
well, it's how it is, isn't it? Snipes is leading the championship. He's looking at it from that side of view where he's like, "Come on, don't bother trying to challenge me. I should be getting most of the points. I'm the team's front runner. I've got the chance to win the championship." But as any competitor to like Welsh Jack is, he's looking at it and he's thinking, "What have I got to close here? A 66 point gap. It's not really. It's a big gap, but it's not an incredibly impossible gap to close. So that's just two different drivers thinking of it that way. But yeah, as a team boss, I would not be pleased to be seeing my two teammates fighting like that. I would want them to be working together, but you can't stop people from competing, and that's just in their nature.
Yeah, it would be quite ideal, would it, if we just stop people, like have people competing against each other. But yeah, I mean, it was a topic before that the race already. The Welsh Jack has basically lost the championship, or likely has lost it because of his inconsistency. And in the last few weeks, we've all said Beeford is really clawing that gap back with a couple of podiums now. Since Japan, his worst result was P4, including three podiums. Sorry, so he's really an upwards trend. But actually, I think we actually have to talk about Snipes, what he's done so far this season, because he's had two results outside of the top 5. Looking at it, we've got starting the season third, second, third, then P5, P8, his win in Vegas, very interesting place to win a race. P4, twice P3, P5, P5, P7, then 2 thirds and a second now. I mean, P4 last season on last game was really consistent, but that is maybe even better because to have 2 results outside the top 5 in such a competitive division is pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that is pretty outrageous form from a very good driver. And you are his teammate, so you're really slacking for him there, aren't you? Starting
Yeah, I'm
down in
B4,
ninth.
yeah. I don't want Snipes to do that well, yeah. I think it's quite amazing considering there are actually 2 drivers fighting for the championship. Because both of them are really consistent, really now putting in the podium positions. So yeah, I think is it maybe towards the end of the season where those drivers just when the more committed people are still driving because usually
hmm
not committed people filter out. And now since this has happened and the standards have also improved, those drivers suddenly pick up way more podiums than they were at the start of the season. Does that just show that whenever they can, they are really there?
Yeah, well, it's just a constant, like you said, it's consistency of showing up, consistency of being fast. It's a mixture of everything just coming together and making a great points tally. That's just you've got to finish races, you've got to join the race to finish the race, and you've got to have good pace to, especially in this division. I mean, it's the all every single one of these drivers on their day has the ability to pull off a win, pull off a pole, but the consistency, like you say, what was it, 2 positions out of the top 5 all season? It's just
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. I mean, Beeford got unlucky at the start of the season, so he started the season with P4, P10, and P12. And in those P10 and P12 races, he had the fastest lap in both of them. Then with 4 podiums and then 2 P8s, and then as I said since then, worst result P4. So yeah, it's quite interesting because from what I've experienced, Beeford usually is the really bang on consistent driver, and Snipes is the one that takes more risks. But apparently, it switched a little bit, and yeah, I think it's good to have a bit of reversed roles to like put them in some bit of unknown territory as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's not last season. It obviously was a three-way fight at the end. I don't think that's going to happen um, this season. It's a 1v1 between 2 drivers who've fought for championships, what I know from what I've heard, over years now. Yeah, I think we're on for a very Verstappen Hamilton-esque championship. Uh, I mean, if Snipes has anything speaking for himself, then that it's equal cars and he can't blame the Alpine engine. So yeah, we'll see how that pans out for sure. So I think that's going to be very interesting, even though there's no Alfa Romeo out there. But yeah, I think that's Division 1 nicely summed up. And we have a look now at Division 2, where it was Jobbo who won for McLaren, starting from P3, the team boss of McLaren. And Beatty Jordan, his teammate, got pole position, comes P2 with Drazzy in third, Rob Kelly in P4, Avenicus in P5, Dylan Baxter in P6 with Omalo in 7th, Razagame in P8, Cons in P9 and Hobbs in P10, with championship leader Shente Bars only in P13, meaning he has not had a top 10 result since I think that must have been before France actually. In the driver standings, the Belgian driver obviously still leads the way with 220 points, and Jamie Hobson second on 200 with Dylan Baxton 192. So it's really between those 3 right now. Esala Jamdan in fourth on 144 points, and Amos Cole on 124. Rob Kelly then on P6 on 103, with Job on 101 and Partig on 100, with Jordan on 98. So those three drivers have really put in some good performances recently, especially this week with the two McLarens to move up the table. And then we've got Jim rounding off the top 10 with 98 points, just ahead of AMS Lloyd on 95. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes obviously still leads the way with 411 points, from McLaren now jumping up 5 positions up into second place on 256 points, with Red Bull on 248 and AlphaTauri on 241, dropping 1 each, with Alfa Romeo on 240, Haas on 233, Ferrari on 220, Alpine on 160, Aston on 155, and Williams on 136. I mean, as you're a team owner yourself, you know how important it is to have two consistent drivers who pick up points weekly. But at times, instead of picking up like P5s, P6s weekly, you might as well do it like McLaren, just pick up a 1-2 on the Kota race. No?
No, yeah, you do want people to have two drivers in the top five, but if you can have two drivers in P1 and P2, you're definitely not complaining about that. I mean, sure, is that the first time that's happened this season?
This season, I think it actually is the first time it has happened.
I'm
Certainly in Division 2, that I wouldn't remember. It might have been in around Division 5, but certainly not in such well, it has happened at Spa in Div 3. I think Red Bull got a 1-2. But yeah, don't can't mind that. But yeah, Division 2 is certainly the first one this season. I think it's actually the first 1-2 since season 2 from Williams, which shock was Kota. I mean, good start that. I mean, yeah, I mean they've done well. I mean, I remember Jordan was a bit angry because Trouble passed him a couple of laps before the end of the race, and he was preparing himself to pass Jobber with the DRS in the last lap. But then, out of nowhere, the Welshman of AMS Lloyd appeared on a fresh set of soft tyres and lapped himself. And he Jobber DRS on the last lap. But Jordan wasn't too happy about, only for him being Irish. Yeah, I mean it's quite upsetting, but I think if it's against your teammate, it's probably like you're gonna get over it, won't you?
Yeah, you're not too bothered, especially when the teammate is the team owner of your team.
Yeah, I mean, Joe will probably think everything was done right. I mean, he was thanking Elvis Lloyd for all his whatever he's done in the last 2 laps there. So yeah, then as I said, looking also on the team standings, it's amazing how close this pack really is, considering with that 1-2, McLaren have jumped 5 positions now. It's actually amazing.
Yeah, it's incredibly close, this division, bar Mercedes. So yeah, it's just especially just one good weekend, and you can, like you say, you can jump all the way from 7th to 2nd or anything around that area really. That just seems there's what 5 teams fighting for 2nd at the moment. So
yeah, it's a pretty strong division in general, considering the last like P10 in the constructors 136 points, which is not too bad overall. That's
no.
That's around just under 10 points per race. So, and that's not shocking. Of course you want more, but that's not too bad. Yeah, looking at the championship in Division 2, I mean, in previous weeks we've talked about, there is a three-way fight now, Shente Bars, Hobbs and Dillon. Looks like Shente Bars still has done the control and everything. We've talked about that. But considering we are only just over a month's time now away from the sign-up period for the next season ending, people like you probably have to look at the midfield drivers a bit more, considering who they want to pick next season to maybe grab that step towards the overall Constructors' Championship or general more championships. And it looks really close, obviously, also in the drivers, considering P14 in Hypes, for example, is 86 points. And they're still pretty close to the
Yeah.
upper midfield positions. And not only the McLarens from this week, but also like Rob Kelly has done a good job in the last few weeks. Partick is now in the top 10, and Partick has not done many races. Lloyd has got his antics from time to time, but still also picked up almost 100 points, and I assume he's gonna score at least 5 more points. Then I've got AMS Cole, who is, in my opinion, very much under the radar, considering he's still P5 in the championship and is probably gonna pass Jam. I mean, it would be quite stupid to just expose yourself now who you're having an eye out, but do you think there's a couple of drivers that when you get them on the draft, you might as well just at the start of next season say, well, didn't get my favorite pick, but could end up as a pretty solid one?
Yeah, I think especially this coming season, I feel like I'm gonna have a bigger understanding of which drivers to pick, when to pick them, and also it's not just the ability of the driver, like we say, it's knowing which ones are gonna be showing in week out. Obviously, it's first time I've done the team principal job before. I think I've done an all right job so far this season, but no, there's definitely a few drivers that I think will be worth a little bit more, and some people who haven't done the research might slip through.
Yeah, I mean, as said, the second period of the game is usually a bit easier to judge because usually people drop out of the game after a couple of weeks or months. But in the second period, if you start like in GRL, the second big season, you kind of
Yeah,
expect them to finish the game off. I mean, obviously there are usually some who like 2 months before the game really switches, they stop. But I think if they complete 15 rounds for you and then say, please get someone else in, that's certainly better than you have to switch them like 5 times per season.
yes,
Which I think Alfa Romeo mostly have not done too badly, but obviously the odd one. Like, I mean, you lost division mergers. I mean, this season was just an up and down, wasn't it?
yeah. Well, Hops I've had the whole time, so
True, yeah. He was
and
leading the
Hops,
three as well.
yeah, Hops is one that I feel like was one of them ones where some people didn't rate him as highly as he should have been rated.
Yeah, he
And I had
made a
a bit
big
of a
jump. That's true. He made a big jump compared to last game.
yes, yeah. The guy, his qualifying pace is pathetic.
Yeah,
Not that his race pace isn't, but his qualifying in comparison to his race pace is different class.
I mean, he
If he
hasn't got
can,
the grip hacks on for nothing.
no, that's true. That's true. He's got them all the way from Zomans. So,
Yeah,
that's
but yeah, I mean, Hobbs is using them to great effect in comparison to Zones. So
yeah. Well, that's what happens when you join FRC. You get grip hacks. So just how it goes.
well, that's certainly an interesting approach, but I'm not going to comment much on that because I don't think FG management position. But yeah, I mean, as said, a week off McLaren so far, and yeah, the others have got a bit of catching up to do, as it seems. I mean, Mercedes doesn't. They are plain second
Yeah,
so far. But yeah, I think that's not worth starting a discussion about how someone can stop Mercedes because I don't think it's gonna happen. You don't think it's gonna happen. I'm pretty certain nobody's gonna think that's gonna happen.
no.
So yeah, I think we can just focus on the midfield fight because apparently it's just a thing in Division Two that one team has an overpowered lineup. Last season it was Alpine, now it's Mercedes, which I'm personally quite happy about as driver. But yeah, speaking on it a bit boring at the top. So yeah, that's Division 2 from this week. So now we have a look at Division 3. And Division 3 this week had half points because yeah, EA Sports decided around lap 15 during the safety car that it now would be the perfect time to just kick every PC player out of the lobby, to just, like, why not? And they couldn't get invited back, which obviously resulted in a race result at first, but we took the race results from lap 15, including penalties, because obviously it was unfair to anyone not being on Xbox to not being able to rejoin. So Corey said he's going to do a last to first with his qualiban, and in the end he did a last to first, from P18 straight up to P1, with Micello in P2 and Boosted in P3. Maldo then in P4 on his Division 3 debut, Maka in P5, AJ Nolan in P6, Cami in P7, some Pikachu, the original race winner, only in P8 with fastest lap. So the German driver was really upset with the outcome of the stewards report. Shumbasha then in P9, because he was then included instead of just having a DNF next to his name, while he just went straight into a wall, which is not the fastest way around the Kota circuit. And Owl, miraculously, in the top 10 once more. P10, ahead of Law and Funky Feature, Drexy, Dracaris, Dom, and F50 Max. Looking at the Drivers' Championship, Micello still leads the way with 216 points from Boosted on 202. Then obviously the promoted Avenicus, or however he's now called, FSU Willow, whatever, on 196 points. Makaden on 157.5, and fourth from Shumbash on 155.5, with some Pikachu on 119.5, Lawn on 117.5 in seventh, Hayes on 85, Yasin on 77, the spinning Swedish driver. So it looks like not continue the current season. So he's probably going to drop out of the top 10 quite shortly, same as Apex in P10 on 74 points, which for some reason still says he gained 5 positions even though he hasn't raced for like the last 2 months. In the Constructors' Championship, AlphaTauri stay on top with 391 points, with Red Bull on 364.5. So it's between those two teams really, with Mercedes then on 294 points, having some gap to close. Ferrari then on 189 points in fourth, and Alpine on 185. So the Italian and the French outfit switch positions, with Aston Martin on 145.5, 1 point ahead of McLaren. I've got Alfa Romeo on 141, Williams on 133, and Haas on 125. Yeah, I mean, it obviously wasn't ideal for a couple of drivers, while others were pretty happy with the outcome of the race results being from lap 15. I mean, you probably weren't too happy with the outcome of it being from lap 15, but I think from what I saw from F50 Max, it would have not changed anything, really, points wise for Alfa Romeo. But
No,
yeah, I mean, looks like it needs a bright finish quite shortly, because
it,
in the team standings, otherwise you might be in trouble quite shortly.
yeah. Well, this seems to be our worst division, and I think it's probably one of the divisions where I've had to change drivers multiple times, due to merges
I
and
remember that you'd heated once.
yeah, heated. I think I've had Sonic Guinea, Formula FSM. I think was in this one.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
Merchant was here as well, true.
yeah, so yeah, there's been quite a few drivers in this one, and like we say, when you have to keep changing your driver, that's never really a good sign. And I think this is our worst performing division for Alfa Romeo. Sadly, I didn't use my inside information to pick up the a basher, but I should have figured that out earlier.
Yeah, I mean, he went straight into a wall, so I think he would have not made
he
it much further than Bright anyway.
mm, that's true. He was not happy with Owl this race. He did inform me of that. Not really sure what happened between the two, but
It's Owl, so it's
it,
probably fair enough.
yeah, that's what I thought. And he did get pole, so it can't have been the worst tracks for him. So it must be pretty upset that he
Talking
didn't
about
have the best race.
Ashley, who's doing commentary for Diffree, actually said what we think of Al recently, because apparently he is actually involved in many incidents recently, which is not ideal considering he's actually won his first Diffree race, I believe, at Portugal.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, from 14th, I think, to first. So
Yeah, he's a fast driver, but his racecraft
something
it's
else.
yeah, it's questionable sometimes. I think he's all that eager is how I would best describe it. Sometimes I think a lot of drivers, and I think that sometimes they've got the pace, but that's why they're not in the higher divisions. Is because they see the overtake and they go for the overtake. They don't, maneuver it in a nice way, wait an extra straight to make the move.
Yeah, well,
So
if you no longer go for a gap,
yeah, well, sadly, none of them have the abilities to where that should really matter. But unless the next Ayrton Senna is driving in
yeah,
GRL, well, then I'll hats,
GRL.
yeah, different. Hats off to him. But until I see that, I'm going to say that they should probably, not take that advice on and be a little bit smarter with their
I
overtakes.
think they might like reflect in Ayrton Senna in if you no longer get a go for a gap that exists, you're no longer racing a driver. But I feel like some of them just send it when he says if in their mind, which is not ideal. But yeah, I think as I said, Owl has good pace. Just needs to bring it onto the track and not abuse his front wing too much. That would be
Yeah,
ideal. But yeah, once again, I mean, Corey is on a massive form. I mean, he's also driving in your league CRL, where in theory, in the future, he's going to do well, and he's going to annoy you a
I
bit.
Yeah, I think he qualified P1. You raced against him. Did he get P1 in qualifying?
He got second, I believe, second or first, but he had a really good qualifying. But funnily enough, I talked about him with Ashley, who was I said he's doing commentary, and he said his pace is really really good, and it's a bit like with Avenicus. He's very fast, but it's a bit uncertain on how consistent it is because in the first race he did, which was back at Vegas, his brakes failed and basically straight line turn one, and then at Zandvoort he also had a similar incident. So he really struggled to get into like Diffrey without being called a terrorist, which is not the best way to enter a season really. But I think he's found his foot, and yeah, I mean, looking at the team standings, you're probably not too happy about that, considering Haas have got a solid lineup. Williams have got with Hayes a good driver, and Bright is not finishing.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, it is the worst
I mean,
performing one we've
you
got,
could be
and
P6 quite soon because you're 4 points off. But
we yeah, that's looking on the positive side, but yeah, we were P6 the week before, weren't we? We've not picked up a singular point, which is it's just devastating. It's just
yeah,
annoying.
it's just this. Apparently, I think if you have Bright as a driver, it might be just you have to suffer for like 5 weeks in sitting P8. At some point, he's gonna win and shoot you up the table. But I mean, it might be worth it at with some drivers that only score like 2 or 3 points, and then someone just wins your race. So
Yeah, well, we've got what Brighton, Luca B are
Luke
our two
B.
drivers. Yeah, um,
I
of
mean, they're both
nothing.
solid. Like that, I wouldn't say they are slow drivers. I mean, Bright was leading Division sorry, with Raven West. So he was really having a good season, and then said, yeah, he's fine to get promoted. And yeah, I mean, he still got I think 2 or 3 poles, but he just couldn't transfer in the race. You reckon that's just an issue with Bright still, that he doesn't have the pure consistency?
Yeah, he's still a little bit raw in his racing and his driving. Yeah, he's got pace, for sure, but putting it all together, he might have a good quali there and he might have a good race there, but it doesn't seem to be all in one race in Division 3 yet. So, but it'll get there. I have no doubt that it'll get there. Will it get there this season is a different question.
Yeah, well, he better performs, otherwise he might not be picked, you know. Uh,
If
certainly not piling on the pressure, certainly not. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a good bond between you and Bright after last season, so let's hope he does well. Yeah, and now let's have a look at Division 4. In Division 4, we've talked about it lots of times. Raven West is absolutely dominating. He's leading by almost 100 points. So going into Kota, there were a couple of drivers aiming to close that gap down, and what happened? It was Raven West who won with the fastest lap of the race to make the championship even more boring. He qualified P5, so solid quality for the Irishman, and just did what he had to do, with White Josh in second, starting from P15, and Bob in P3. And I saw that, I was a little surprised after a bit of a mid-season for him. Casper then in fourth, with Jesper in P5. Tweaky Scorpion in P6, one of his best results of the season. Asteroid in P7, the man who said he's clearly in the wrong tier, also got pole position this week, so certainly performed nicely in qualifying and just lost a bit in the race. Ayahuasca in P8, Koi in P9, and Taylor Boss, or Deep Day here, in P10, with Diamond Miner in P11, who took out the Haas team owner, so I think also he's done a really nice job overall. In the driver standings, we obviously have Raven West still leading the way with 269 points from Jesp on 176, which kind of on the positive side means Raven West cannot win the championship at Singapore. So at least another 2 weeks of championship fight. Bright then on 173 points, and White Josh on 147, with Koi on 140, Sonic on 137, Ronnie on 127, 5 points ahead of Quell, Nebrestrom on 119, and Remote Banjo on 114. While in the team standings, Mercedes said lead the way with 395 points from Alpine on 296, so they jump up into second with Alfa on 294. Then we've got Red Bull on 258 and Ferrari on 239, while AlphaTauri sits on 204, jumping up into P6, with Aston dropping down to 7th on 182, even though that's a good result with Bob. McLaren on 170 points, while Williams and Haas are tied for P9 on 127 points. I'm just not going to bother. I'm just going to ignore the first place. It's just good job, Raven West, but I'm sick of the topic. I'm just sick of the topic. But once again, to one of your drivers. I mean, why Josh? At the start of the season, maybe some people would have said, why is he in this tier? He's lacked previously. But yeah, now towards the end of the season, he's really doing well, and proving that with a P15 to P2, which I think also made him driver of the week of GRL. And I think you gotta be proud of his progress. No?
Very proud of his progress. I mean, I was racing against him in 3.5, and I think if he won the majority of races against us in 3.5, if not every race. He's one of the main reasons I did pick him in the end. I did know that he had the ability to pull off a result and stay consistent throughout a race to win races. So yeah, been good for him. Like you say, some of his races, he's lacked a bit of pace throughout. Maybe he's not looked as strong as he has done in previous seasons when been in a lower division. But yeah, back end of the season, he's starting to find it and getting used to it. I think some people just take a little bit longer to get used to the people they're driving against, especially because everyone drives differently, and knowing which drivers will allow you to sit behind them or which drivers are going to consistently dive at each corner and stuff. It definitely takes a bit to learn that, and it obviously allows you to get better once you've then learned the tendencies of your other drivers around you.
Yeah, and talking of good performances from this week, well, I fully agree. But Bob finished third. He's also driving in CRL, and I think given Ashram quite well. So
Yeah,
probably bit of a surprise on such a pretty strong Division 4 grid to see him on the podium and do that well. No?
it is. He's very fast on this game. Like last season in CRL, he was just on the same level as me. A bit faster. Like
So he
maybe
was
like two.
amazingly fast.
Yeah, he was like 2 tenths, 3 tenths faster than me last season. But like in the races in CRL, I think I won more, and then he had won quite a few. Um, but no, this season he's now like a minimum of a second faster than me. I just can't even get close to him. So he has come a long way. So it's nice to see him on the podium as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was Aston Martin team owner at the start of the season, which is now handed over. I mean, I don't think it's the best spot right now, considering they're last overall. But yeah, at least he brought some good points to
Himself.
yeah, and at least yeah, picked a couple of them up. Yeah, I said Ravenous pretty far at the top. I mean, Jesper second is probably gonna finish second very likely because I doubt. I mean, Black Josh can gain that 30 points deficit up certainly, but so can all the others, and it's just so close in the midfield. But you reckon Jesper, considering he hasn't done the full season, has also done a really good job, considering his
He,
teammate wasn't really there, but both of them in the top 10 as well. So what do you think of his performances?
no, I think Jasper's been since coming in has been very, very, very good. Doesn't seem to not finish in the points very often. He's always a benefit. Um, and since him starting racing for just yeah, I don't think he's missed many races either since coming in either, has he?
He's
I
missed
think he's
one,
done
which was China.
first. Yeah, since his win at France, he's come first and 10th, then second,
Fifth on 16.
then
He's had three
yeah,
wins,
yeah, then
including like
fifth.
6 podiums. So overall, very strong. Yeah. I mean,
I think he's yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
since then he's probably been on the level of Raven West, hasn't he? He's just
yeah, just
gained a
not
bit.
raced as much.
Yeah, exactly. And considering if he had 5 more rounds, if you say, looking at his average points per race, 17. So it's a really good average. So yeah, he will probably be right in there. But sadly, we can't just ban Raven West to the last 5 races, which probably would make it quite interesting come the final. Um, but yeah, so that was quite interesting. I was like, yeah, I think he's done a good job, and yeah, Andrew was quick enough to pick Jesper up, even though he didn't really aim for a full time seat. So yeah, very interesting.
Just forced him into one.
Yeah, he said like there are no full times available. So he just got him in because I said you can sign a reserve, but there's no guarantee that they'll stick around. And Jesper apparently liked the Ferrari because it actually is an equal car and doesn't have the awful tire of real life. So yeah, that's pretty nice for him. Now we have a look at Division 5, where it was Cintium who got pole, and it was Cintium who took the win from Patrick in P2 and Temp Cannon in third, with J Street in P4, getting also close to his first podium since Season 2, Kevin in P5, Duncan in P6, Melly in P7, Erna in P8, Enati Frog in P9, Daza in P10, Barbarini in 11th, and Freeze in 12th. Those two were certainly some protagonists of the race. Papeda, Riley, and Andrew have retired from the session. In the driver standings, Andrew leads with 188 points, but due to his retirement and Cintium's win and pole position, there are only 7 points separating them, so Cintium is really piling on the pressure now on the Ferrari team owner. Barbarini then in third on 170 points, with Milk Cow, who's obviously left, in fourth on 169. 10th Cannon on 167, with Reason 161 and Lexus on 154. So 34 points gap between the top 7. Erna then on 116, tied with Daza, and J Street in 10th on 108 points, ahead of McMessy, Kieran Papeda, and so on. In the team standings, Alfa Romeo lead the way with 518 points, so someone in here is going to be really happy about that. 464 points. Ferrari on 400, AlphaTauri 369, McLaren 337, Mercedes on 327, Red Bull on 308, Aston Martin 252, Williams on 242, so 10 points less, and then Alpine on 227. I mean, before we praise your team for doing so well in this merged Div 5, Div 6 division, Andrew, it was all quite plain sailing for him for the whole season, but now Cintium has decided that there's only one way, and that's just putting on the pressure, which I think for you now is basically spectator because you're probably too far away. It is good to see, that he finally gets someone who is basically complete opposite to him. Pretty inconsistent, but really fast instead of just very consistent.
It's fun. It is fun to see. I won't lie, jealous. Pretty annoyed that I stopped racing for a bit. Glad that I gave other people the opportunity to, have some limelight for a bit before I come back. But no, it's like you say, it's the complete opposites of drivers. Cintium he's rapid, so quick. Racing against him is very hard. Disability. And Andrew, racing against him is very, very hard because he's always there. Like every corner, if you go into the gravel a little bit, he's not gone into the gravel. He's there. He's ready to overtake you on the next straight. Yeah, it's going to be a good battle, and I'm glad
he's like some shadow, isn't he? You just can't get rid of him. He's just always like at the back. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna go through. Why not?
Yeah, it is really weird. I must like the Silverstone race. I go back to all the time, like thinking about it. We had a safety car, then I get a 3-second penalty. It's the final lap. Everyone's like, the person behind me has a 3-second penalty, the person behind me has a 3-second penalty, and Andrew's still in the 3-second gap, but I can't see it on my thing. He just ends up winning, and I'm just like, what is gone on here? The guy and he doesn't give up. However,
well, yeah, it's just
this race. I I was trying to join. I arrived late from home from work, so I missed it. But I joined the race in time to watch. And like 3 corners in, he's DNF, and I was just like, that's so un-Andrew like. So
Yeah,
maybe a little bit of pressure creeping in.
yeah.
And it's
I talked
it,
with him actually the week before. I said like, because like he doesn't like the circuit of the Americas, and I said I really like it because it's kind of high speed, but it doesn't clearly mean that the wheel is faster around there like Qatar. But
mhm.
they obviously need a pointy car. Even though I always liked understeer, I'm quite happy now with how the car feels and everything. And he said, yeah, understeer's so much better. He feels so much better. What happens? He understeers into Freezy and retires. Well, it was quite yeah, interesting to see that happen. I was like, maybe he's not too happy with his understeer now.
No, it's
But
set a bit of a precedent as well as the next race that he did with me. He then DNF'd on the final lap, and then the other race after that, he also did with me. He then also DNF'd on the final lap. So maybe a little performance is kicking in there for him. Maybe he's losing with like I say under the pressure, which can only be a benefit for Cynthia.
yeah, I mean, I mean, Cynthium is just if Bright is interesting. I'll give you that. But Cynthium is something I have not seen before. I've done this so much this season. I'm just gonna go through the results of Cynthium. DNF, 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 P1, P17, P13, DNF, DNF, P1, 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 P1. Let's head over until this merges. So then after those 5 wins, we had P6, P5. The first time in the top 10 we didn't win. DNF, P1. Yeah, it's just amazing. Like the man has got the biggest winning streak in the league, but yet again is not leading the championship. Yeah, I mean, as I said, he's the complete opposite to Andrew. But he got help because he was behind Freezy and who else? He was around Berberini and he was behind Freeze. And I think last time we did this podcast, you said you think Freeze is gonna do really well in his last 2 races and probably clinch the title because you think he's got the best pace. Well, Freeze has certainly had an interesting approach. Not only was he the reason, like, was he the car Andrew understeered to put him in the wall? No, Freeze also went into the Red Bull, even though he's driving for Alpine, and then with 2 laps to go, he's right behind the actual Red Bull of Barbarino, drives into him, and DNFs them both. So he's basically done anything Cintium wanted him to, because he's just caused a DNF for any non-Haas championship contender, which is basically what Cynthia must have been dreaming of, and he got it in the end. I mean, as said, it's quite easy that with so many people in the championship, they tangle. But if you're the reason for 3, including yourself, to DNF in such a big championship, it's bit unlucky, or don't know how to call it really, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. I mean, I'll never tell him or predict him to do well because that is clearly put a massive jinx on him because that is the worst of all bad outcomes. Like you say, even him like wiping himself out wouldn't have been as bad as allowing someone else to get a massive pickup of points with no one else around him getting any points at all.
Yeah,
That's like
I
four
mean,
four people's titles is affected there, and only one of them is allowed to pick up points. I mean, that is, yeah. That's just
Yeah, I mean,
crazy.
the stewards were apparently really happy with him because he's entered quota of 162 points and he's left the paddock with 161. So make of that. That's certainly not been a great progress. If you end up with less points than you've started the weekend with. But yeah. Well, Division 5 is certainly an interesting one, and I'm sure as soon as Division 4 is decided, Miller will stream this championship because I think watching that is certainly gonna be very, very interesting if that many championship contenders. Now, though, we have a look at the last remaining F1 division of the week, which is Division 7, where Sion won from pole position with Quick Mick in second, who also got fastest lap. And Batty is back after not doing a basketball on Monday nights anymore. He's just decided to join Division 7 and picked up a podium on his Season 3 debut. Not Season 3, Season 4. With Mike Reed in P4, Browns the Buns in P5, Mason Rott in P6, Axe Flash in P7, Gaza in P8, Stubbsy in P9 after even leading the race at one point, and Blast Alpha in P10 from Kieran W, Monopole Monster, and Sparky started 13th, finished 13th. In the Drivers' Championship, Sion is still leading with 214 points. And has a solid gap to P2 and Stubbsy on 170.5 and Flash on 169.5, while Cassie Buchanan is on 160.5, Mike Reed on 141, Moss on 129, jumping ahead of Browns the Buns on 128, and Leo Hamilton on 124, who apparently still from Australia. Logan J in P9 on 93 points, A-Sky on 90, just ahead, still 11 points ahead of Quick Mick, who's really had a good job, and Sparky still aiming to get that top 10 at the end of the season, with the Constructors' Championship still being led by McLaren on 351 points, while Haas is on 310.5, Williams on 259, and Ferrari 1.5 points behind, with Mercedes on 225, Alfa Romeo on 218, so the top two in the overall constructors, right next to each other here in Div 7, with Red Bull on 184.5, 1 point ahead of Alpine, while AlphaTauri is on 129.5, and Aston Martin on 72.5. Well, yeah, this is certainly, considering we had a 8 or 7-way championship fight at one point, certainly made it quite clear that Sion seems to be the real favourite now for the last two races, doesn't he? Considering he's almost stretched his championship lead out to 50 points almost, which is clearly over a race win.
Yeah, well, he's really like just taking it step by step, hasn't he? I mean, last two, what was it? He won this race, came second the race before that. Didn't race the one before that, but yeah, when he races, he gets podiums near enough consistently. Can't really see many races where he doesn't finish in the top three.
Yeah,
Unless he DNF.
his worst non-DNF, like his worst finishing position was at round 1, which was P8. So he's actually finished in the top 8 every time, or he was obviously DNF'd 2 times, 3 times,
Yeah.
3 times, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's something with Div 7 and McLaren that just makes them pretty consistent, as we've seen last season as well. But,
Definitely.
I mean, there's no overpowered Ferrari this time around.
There is no.
I think.
And surprising, there's no Mercedes driver just running away with it.
Yeah, luckily, to be honest, I'm quite happy because that would make the overall constructors even more boring. But I mean, he was your Tier 2 driver. He was the first pick in Tier 2. It was Sparky, obviously. You have been doubted from many sides because Sparky obviously isn't he's one of the slower drivers, let's be honest.
Yeah.
If not, he's one of the two slowest. Him and Tyler are probably the slowest, but he's peaked at 72.5 points. I think that must make you happy, considering he's turned up basically every time. He's finished most of the races. He's picked up almost 100 points, and I think if any of your drivers had at least 72.5 points, you probably would be much higher in the overall as well. So I guess you got to be happy with his season so far.
Sparky, he might not be the fastest, and that is for sure. But he puts on a show. He puts on a show every week. He's always happy to be there. He's messaging in the chat. He's always wanting to be part of the team. And he wants to get better, but he also just wants to have fun. And you just can't do anything but respect it. I mean, yeah, he's the perfect person to drive against. Because it might make a mistake and it might cost you a DNF or whatever, but you know he's not intentionally done that, so you don't mind as much compared to other people. But yeah, no, 70 points is no mean feat. I do have drivers that I wish had got 70 points this season. So yeah, for someone that, like you say, might be one of the two slowest drivers on the grid, he shows up every race, he puts his best in every race, and he finishes most races.
Yeah, he's finished the most races out of everyone, I think.
Yeah.
Tied with a couple. So yeah, I mean, as I said, he's got 72.5 points, and I think that might be about as many DNFs as Bright has picked up over the course of the last season. So I think points are certainly the much wiser choice. But yeah, I mean, Stuart as well, you've got a really good number one driver, kind of trying to put on the pressure for against Sion. In the team standings as well, you're kind of in the middle now, so not too bad. But looking at the constructors, while McLaren are leading with 41 points. I mean, of course there's still enough time to dethrone them, but with the form of Sion, it's probably quite unlikely that someone's going to pass them there as well, is it?
Yeah, it's quite unlikely because you've got to have both drivers up there as well, especially when Skion, like you said, by himself, is just being consistent and being top three, top five driver in most races. It's gonna take someone getting P1, P2 near enough as a team every race from here on out to even think about it. So yeah, no, I'd say McLaren have practically wrapped up this one, which is pretty. Like you say, it's pretty nice to see that a different team's winning the constructors' championship compared to the Mercedes team. So yeah,
I mean, let's have
it's
a look.
refreshing.
Yeah, let's have a look actually before we have a look at overall. We've got McLaren in Div 7, so that's one team. Then we've got Alpha in Div 5, so that's the second. In Division 4, we've obviously got Mercedes, so we do in Div 2. Alpha Tauri in Div 3, and in Division 1, we've got Alpine. So in 7 divisions, 5 constructors winning, so that's certainly looking nicely. Before we wrap this up, though, I said we have a look at the overall Constructors' Championship. The main reason why we all exist, isn't it? The overall Constructors. The most important thing, as we say, we wake up on Monday. The first thing we think about is not the coffee, it's not the tea, it's not the breakfast, it's the overall Constructors' Championship. Well, looking at it, Mercedes is at the top once again, or still, with 1,944 points. Alfa Romeo remain in second for another eternity, basically, with 1,705 points. Red Bull on 1,509.5. So they've really had a good patch recently with Bray being the team owner. I mean, he might as well not be able to type like a proper human being, but he certainly picked up some good points with his drivers. Ferrari then on fourth on 1,456 points, so Andrew remains around the top four spot. McLaren then on 1,417 and Alpine on 1,395.5, while AlphaTauri sit on 1,388, Haas on 1,368.5, and now I'm shocked. It has happened. Williams, for the first time since I think the start of or the middle of 2022, Williams are ahead of Aston Martin in the constructors. They've struggled to pass them since start of season 3, but now they have by 20 points on 19.5 because Williams sit on 1,072 and Aston Martin 1,052.5. Even though we have gaps at the top, obviously, between Mercedes and Alfa and Red Bull, and then at the bottom between Williams and Haas, I mean, I think overall we have to say, with obviously a couple of more races to go, this overall Constructors' Championship seems to be nicely balanced. If you consider I've seen multiple overall Constructors' Championships where there are just teams who lead with like almost 2,000 points, but at the bottom there is a team with 400 points. So
Yeah.
we've not got like a 1,500 points gap in between first and last. I mean, it is just under 900 points, which isn't great. But I think we can both also say that with the team owner system, basically you have to be on it all the time. And Aston Martin with Bob struggled time-wise to like sort it. And Williams didn't really have a team owner because Lemon also was very busy. But
Yeah.
Beeford was very active. You were Red Bull with Bray, I think, thrown a blinder there because overall as a team owner is always pretty solid. Andrew's always active. Jobbo is. Alpine always there or thereabout. They were fine. I think the one lineup really stands out as well. And Alpha Tarrant has as well. Especially Haas now with Ash as well. So it really shows like the activity of the community, which role it plays, and that it works out with the gap not being massive, does it?
Yeah, no, definitely being active helps the team owners from a perspective of picking drivers to begin with and also knowing which drivers to then bring in. Like when one of your drivers leaves and you get the list of what drivers are there to replace, knowing which ones are actually a good driver from that list is also important because we don't have the data on all the reserves. You've got to go off what you've seen in other races of them filling in, your knowledge of them in other leagues and stuff like that. So that's probably the toughest bit to do without being active in the actual league. I mean, I don't know how you would go about that. You'd just be picking from the gamer tag and which one you think's the funniest or the one that you vibe with the most. So probably where some team owners, but like you say, 900 points separating the first to last in one where we're talking with people over with 2,000 points and 1,000 points. I don't think it's really that big of a gap, in all honesty, especially when we have a different point system allowing for more points to go around.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, no, I think most teams have done a good idea, a good basis of picking the team. And generally, if you can know, you're generally looking for one division to bring out your most amount of points. Because generally, obviously, with how the picks worked, that might have been the one where you had the most amount of high tier picks.
Yeah,
and also
many rounds as well. Like with one of the if not the longest season of most big leagues. So Obviously, there are, like I said, more points on offer, more races, and I think 6 divisions. At one point, it was 8. So it will be hard to all keep them within 500, especially with the different skill sets of team owners. So yeah, I think it's not too bad. I mean, ideally you get it a bit closer, and that's also it's not a shock. Obviously, we're trying to figure out because it's not in real life, is it? Where we have wind tunnel time, which we kind of want
Yeah,
people to get it closer. But I think in general, what they are doing or thinking of doing in MotoGP is very interesting, which is the concession system. So basically, give teams who finish lower a bit of a head start, slight advantage. Not it's obviously more difficult when it's not performance related. But if it's just I'm going to give them an extra point in the draft system so that I can pick once before, which also means that team owners are likely to stick with the team, aren't they? Because they
yeah,
won't that because then there is no progress if they switch every season. So, for example, if we say Alfa Romeo in all seasons combined is the best team, but if they weren't, if they're like fourth, and you would like to, because the draft tier one system is always the same, you would like to push Alfa Romeo forwards because then you could almost guarantee yourself the first Div 1 Tier 1 pick every season, and
yeah,
you could probably pick the best driver. So yeah, I think there are slight tweaks or reg changes or whatever we can test out, and certainly hopefully gonna get even closer. And yes, we've went through a couple of drivers that just jumped off and said they don't want to play the game anymore, which didn't help, of course. For example, I think Ferrari has a couple of open spots in their team, which also opens up the gap. But yeah, I think enough of that. I think overall it looks quite competitive, especially in the midfield. But yeah, we said it previously. Mercedes and Alfa look to be like overall the two best teams this season. Well, Mercedes, I think you can clearly see on the lineups how strong they are. Alfa Romeo have actually been a bit under the radar, considering their drivers are excelling in the lower divs rather than the top divisions. Because
yeah,
a driver like B4 or Shente Bars is probably rather come to your mind than who, let's say, a Daza or Milka or whoever. But looking below, I think considering Red Bull were basically eighth for quite a long time, Perez really done a good job with his team now, hasn't he, to really push them up to third?
yeah, definitely.
Because they've signed a couple of good drivers, but also in the midfield. I mean, in danger of repeating myself, but this P3 or at least P4 spot could go anyone's way, can't it? Because the teams look so close.
Yeah, the team. It's just like I say. It's just the same as some of the standings where it's just a 1 week shuffle, isn't it? Especially in that midfield where they're all fighting for the same amount of points, and it's the drivers that are also in them teams fighting against each other in the divisions as well. So it's quite entertaining to see.
I mean,
Uh,
it's quite amazing
yeah,
if you think about it. McLaren had that 1-2 in Div 2, so that's worth 45 points. If you take
yeah,
45 points off them, they are P8 instead of P5. So yeah, it's quite ridiculous. Um,
yeah,
and then yeah, we've got Williams and Aston who are basically said fighting for the wooden spoon. So I think the drivers are not really pushing towards ninth place, but someone's got to pick ninth, someone's got to pick 10th. Or is there anything looking at the constructors' championship that
Um,
catches your eye out?
looking at the constructors, the Haas team, I think they're going to finish fourth. That's what I've decided. Looking at that, I think the Haas team are going to end up finishing fourth,
It's
if not
interesting,
fifth,
yeah.
if not third.
Yeah, I think
I
Haasa
think,
is really strong as well. I think they've got some really good drivers.
yeah, I think that they will be there or thereabouts. The issue is, though, their main point scorer probably at the moment in recent races probably been Corey, in which
Seems him
case
as
they've not.
well, I think.
Yeah, they
They've got
seem to have
many
like two.
drivers that are capable of wins, I think.
Yeah, so that's obviously always a benefit for them. But nah, it's a tough one. But then you've got AlphaTauri and stuff who are rapid. McLaren. Yeah, no, he's going to be tough. But I'll stick with Haas. I think they'll finish fourth. I don't think they'll finish third in the end,
I
but I
mean,
think they'll finish fourth.
it's certainly going to be a solid season for them, considering their best overall constructors result has been P9. So I think they can only improve, because I'd be shocked
That's
if they end up in the bottom two positions. So,
I would be very shocked, especially when I'm not too sure that Williams or Aston Martin have any races at the top of a division.
no, they had Leo Hamilton a couple of weeks ago before he stopped, but then yeah, that sums Williams' season up, and Aston Martin is just they're struggling. I feel like since the Aston Martin in real life dropped pace, the GRL Aston Martin team has as well. I mean, Bob, I think his podium was the highlight of the for them this week. Yeah, it's just they just can't put it together. I mean, I hope they can next week. I've seen Papeda has signed up again, so maybe he'll stick to Aston Martin. Yeah, Williams and Aston were second and third last season, so this is how things can swing. Obviously, there was no team owner former, but yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. But I think we're certainly on for some more change in the overall constructors, especially with championships heating up, which I think is a good topic before we end this podcast. I mean, all these championships being decided within the next 5-6 weeks, certainly probably gonna affect this championship as well, won't they? Because drivers at times will drive and act differently than they would usually.
Yeah, no, definitely the championship and the overall championship is not over. Still a lot of points to play for, and like you say, with people will get to the end of the season and they might be in a championship fight, so that will make them drive differently. Maybe they'll come alive with that pressure, or maybe they'll drive a bit slower, thinking, "Oh, I'll not get a DNF," hoping that I might lose a few points this race, but he's going to mess up the next race. So that'll affect it for sure. But when you've got someone like there's Mercedes, for example, when you've got Raven West, who you can practically guarantee is going to win his race, um, that always helps you just build a lead away from people. And then for me personally, in the Alfa Romeo, I know that I'm capable of finishing a high place in my division, so that's at least I know there's points coming there.
We'll see how you'll
So
do in Singapore. It's gonna be
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, Singapore being my first race coming back, so we'll see how I do there. And that will be interesting. It's not really a track that I do too well on, so not really that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a driver's track, isn't it? The best drivers
It
excelled are in the race.
that is yeah, that's true. But it's not my best for my TT times around there are probably not the nicest things to look at and stuff like that. But yeah, it's all
Yeah,
about the race first in the end. So
tense terrain as well, so it's gonna be interesting.
yeah, it does tend to rain.
Yeah, but
But
a bit of monsoon is always highly appreciated to just add to the pressure of some drives. But yeah, we have now waffled for 1 hour 20 minutes. I think that's about enough.
that's an impressive waffle.
To wrap off the wrap up, wrap up this podcast for the COTA or US Grand Prix. So yeah, next week, as said, we'll go back to Asia for the Singapore Grand Prix to basically really enter the final third of GRL Season 4, where 6 champions are about to be crowned. None of them next week, but probably the week after at Qatar. So yeah, we'll head to one of the best street circuits of the calendar. So yeah, we'll see you there next week. As said, I don't know who I'll be here with exactly for the Singapore podcast, but I'm sure someone will, and we'll guide you through the action there as well. But until then, we'll see you there when GRL returns.